All right, call the regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting to order. And you can note that all the commission is present. The Pledge of Allegiance, I am doing it tonight, so if you please rise and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it is one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we've now come to the public comments section. This is a section if anyone would like to address the commission on an item that is not on the agenda. I don't have any forms. Just wanting to make sure if anyone wants to, going once, twice, okay. We have a presentation item, the consent calendar. I'm sorry, the consent calendar. Yeah. So let us, do I have a motion for?
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Second. So I think we have now a little device to our right. This is a new thing. So I think we can vote on it that way. All right. So we're high tech. We're going on to the discussion item, number 2, Planning Commission Workshop. And I think we have a staff report.
Yes, we do. Carrie Ty has a brief introduction this evening, and then the applicant for the project is here in the audience.
Good evening, Chair Hamilton and members of the Planning Commission. In our ongoing effort to involve the Planning Commission in larger projects at an early stage, we bring forth tonight an applicant-initiated presentation regarding a proposed application. This application is currently in the city review process, and it's for a request for a general plan amendment, zone change, and tentative tract map to ultimately allow 250 residential units on a 30-acre site located on the northwest corner of Rancho Parkway and Portola Parkway. That's in sort of the inland part of the city in the Baker Ranch Plan community, and the site backs up to the State Route 241 and is bound on one side by Portola Parkway, another side by Rancho Parkway and Industrial Development, and it's across the street from the city's sports park site that's currently under construction. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to the applicant, Baker Ranch Properties, represented tonight by Michael Watkins and Larry Tucker. Thank you.
Commissioners, it's a pleasure to be here before you, staff. I haven't done this before in the Planning Commission, so if I make some mistakes and seem a little nervous, it's because I am. I have the great honor. I'm sure you'll do great. Pardon me?
I'm sure you'll do great.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I have the great honor of being the grandson of E.P. Baker, and in 1958 he bought with a group of partners 5,000 acres, which is the original. I don't think we have the slide of that, but I had Gail pass out the. That's from 1960. We had that. He had that done in as an appraisal for 1960, and thought you might want to see it. I moved down from Seattle in 1979 to go to work for my grandfather, and I've been managing the property with. He passed away in 1980. I started managing the property, and Larry's been a partner of mine and a friend for over 30 years. Anyway. So much of the current day city of Lake Forest is located on Baker Ranch. I think I need to, yeah, here we go. I think probably if you can, look at that aerial, you can see that. In the 80s, the only part of Baker Ranch that was not developed was in the noise and crash zones because of the jets from the El Toro the El Toro Marine Corps Air Station. So we, really for years we grew oranges and avocados from the 60s through probably 1990 when we went into a joint venture with Shea, and we're going to develop the property into an office complex, a large office complex. In the 80s, late 80s, Baker Ranch became part of a consortium of landowners who burned their properties with Melrose bonds. It was a $235 million roadway project that all of the major landowners, 11 of us at the time, basically burdened our properties with bonds. We paid them. They're almost ready to be paid off, I think. 25 years, and we have, with the Shea Baker part of it, we've paid most of the bonds off, and the final 30-acre piece that we're here about tonight will be paid off next year, I think. So we've been part of the fabric of the city for 55 years. I've been involved 35 years, as I mentioned. And we have, over the years, given the unincorporated County of Orange property, dedicated property, and then when the city incorporated in 1991, you can see the list of property that we've dedicated to the city over that time period, and have always sort of felt, my grandfather was alive for the year and a half that I was with him. He would always tell me that no matter, this was for the County of Orange at the time, but I think even more so with the city, and that is that, when we have to partake in a process with a public agency, we have to do what's right for the public, but we have to do what's right for us. We want to do what's right for the public. And I think the first dedication that's not on here is that my grandfather dedicated some land to the county to widen and straighten El Toro Road because there was drag races going on there in the late 50s and 60s. Jerry, you were probably part of it. So he didn't want any deaths out. He didn't want any kids getting in accidents. So he dedicated some land to have the roadway widened. But anyway, we've given dedicated land over time, and certainly for some of the projects that the county or the city's been involved with recently, the right-of-way for Rancho Parkway is certainly a large roadway that we were involved with in dedicating that 4-acre piece of property. And the El Toro High School was dedicated by Baker Ranch, the open space corridors, etc. And this is the Shea Baker. We became partners with J.F. Shea Company in 1999, I think it was, to build, and then with the Marine Corps Air Station, of course, we were going to. Am I done now?
Yeah, you're speaking.
Well, okay, well, I'm just going to say that we joint ventured with Shea in 1999, and we were going to build a commercial industrial project. And now we ended up with one of the most, I think it's going to be one of the most beautiful residential projects in the county, I think, in the city certainly too. Anyway, thanks very much.
Thank you, Michael. My name's Larry Tucker, and I'm a partner in Baker Ranch Properties, and I want to go back and just kind of highlight some of the dedications. I think, the reason why we're doing this and the reason why Michael got up, I coerced him into getting up, is to make sure that people that weren't aware of this, that there actually is a Baker family in Baker Ranch Properties, and has been for 55 years. We're involved in the certainly a lot with the county process, and then when the city incorporated, we've been in the city with our remaining holdings from the get-go. But the land that's across the street from us, it's becoming the sports park, was open space dedication that Baker Ranch Properties made to the county. Etney Skateboard Park, likewise. The IRWD land that you've seen maps on, at least I believe you have, where City Hall is going to go, the new City Hall, that was property that was contributed to Los Alitos Water District with the formation of the district. The open space corridors for Serrano and Aliso Creeks. The Serrano Adobe was donated by Baker Ranch Properties along with funds for refurbishment. We also sold 15 acres to the city recently in 2010 at a 20% discount below the appraised value of the city's appraiser. and then 1.1 mile of Alton Parkway right-of-way, which is a lot of land, for 1.1 miles, 6 lanes with a median, as well as the land for the gap closure for Rancho Parkway were all dedicated by Baker Ranch Properties at no cost to the city. And then lastly, without the support of Baker Ranch Properties at the incorporation hearings at LAFCO, the city would not have been incorporated. That's just kind of a known fact, at least amongst the people who were involved back then. So onward and upward. In 1998, we formed a venture with the J.F. Shea Company for 387 acres, and that is a property that was entitled for 5 million square feet of commercial. And when the airport went away, then we allowed our partner, J.F. Shea Company, who also has a commercial building division, to switch over to residential. We were involved in that process, including the planning of the process, the design decisions, until the entitlements were complete in the early 2012. And then we sold our half interest in that project to Toll Brothers. And Toll Brothers and Shea have carried out the vision that existed when we exited the scene, and I think they've just done an exceptional job. It's a beautiful, beautiful development. They've spared no expense, and that was our last project. Our next project is 30 acres that's right across the street from the sports park site. And the properties at the northwest corner of Portola Parkway and Rancho Parkway. And it was a surface mining operation, actually still is legally, but it was in operation for 45 years. It had a mountain of material on it, I mean literally a mountain. That was the bad news. The good news is that the material was sand, so it got mined off the property. It's not like they dug a pit, but they brought the property down to grade over 15 years, thereabouts. The current use is, as you can see, it's leased to small businesses for storage types of uses, including Instant Jungle, which is a nursery business. The current general plan designation is commercial with a sand and gravel overlay. The current zoning is urban activity. The zoning details are set forth in the Baker Ranch Plan, Community Development Plan, and Supplemental Text. Burdened all of we had about 600 acres at the time, including the 387 acres. It was all done under one PC zone. The mining operation is subject to a reclamation permit, and the reclamation permit, incidentally, includes the 15 acres we sold to the city for the park, as well as Rancho Parkway. The proposed entitlement is a general plan amendment to take the commercial land use to a low, medium, and medium density residential. It's to change the urban activity to residential. It's a tentative track map for 112 single-family detached homes, and then a 9.5 acre super pad that could end up being a variety of housing types that we haven't designed yet. There's a half-acre recreational site. In addition, we need a development agreement because the city ordinances require a development agreement for anybody that requests a general plan amendment on private property. That's just one of your ordinances. So that's what we also need. So here's the track map. I believe you have copies of the track map, but I'll just run through this quickly. Once again, the general plan amendment would go from from commercial to low, medium, and medium density residential. Zone change for the PC text that would cover that as well. you can see the design. Approximately the left or western two-thirds of the property would be subdivided into 112 lots. Now, we've already laid out the lots on that particular parcel. The eastern or right one-third would, it's about 9.5 acres, would be for, it could be for multifamily. You know, you can always come in and do less. You can't go in and do more. So we've sought a higher potential density there to 138 units. We think there's a pretty good chance it won't be 138, but that's what we've studied under all of our CEQA studies, and that's what we're applying for. At some point, a home builder will come in and present a plan on that, and I'll cover that in a second. And the tentative map is something that you also have a copy of. You probably, well, I'm sure when we finally get to a hearing, you will we'll get you a full-size copy in case you really want to scrutinize it. It's a little hard to see even with the 11 by 17, but it gives you you know, a pretty good idea of what we're proposing. So it's 112 single-family detached lots, 9.5 acre multifamily site may include up to 138 units or an average density of around 15 units per acre. The access for the entire project is at an intersection that's directly across from the entry to the park. When Rancho Parkway was designed, and we were a participant in all of the design meetings on that, the city and Baker Ranch Properties jointly decided that there should be one access point into the park and into our site. We didn't want offset driveways, and we wanted the ability to put a traffic signal in there. We couldn't have had a series of traffic signals, so that's how the circulation is set up. The development is proposed to be gated. It won't be a manned gate. It will be electronic access. The setback along Rancho Parkway on the single-family detached side, the left side, has a 25-foot landscape setback. The single-family lots are going to average about 4,000 square feet. They'll range from 3,500 to 5,500 square feet. The entitlements that we are seeking now are just the general plan amendment, the zone change, the tentative map, the development agreement, and because the grading plan is different than the grading plan, or effectively what's a grading plan under the reclamation plan with the state mining agency, we will also be petitioning the Planning Commission for an approval of an amended reclamation plan so that the reclamation plan conforms with the grading plan for the project. The last point on this sheet is that we are not residential developers, not proposed any architecture. And that means that the specific plans for the architecture for the project, we've lotted out the left side of the development. The left side of the development will have to come into the Planning Commission for a site development permit. So that's going to go through an additional review when the actual home builder ends up acquiring the property, presents plans. So you see the plotting of the houses, the design of the houses, the park/recreation area, what that looks like. So you will go through the typical set of plans that you go through for every single project that comes through the city that gets approved. On the right side of the development, it's a super pad. Somebody can come in there and design a project from how many ever units they want as a minimum, up to 138 units. They will come up with the circulation for how that all works, and you can just kind of envision, well, if it's more dense, then they're going to have a different plan than if it's less dense. Our expectation is it'll be more dense, because what the home builders try to do is they try to segment the market, so they have some product that's more expensive, some that's a little less expensive, and down the line, so that they can absorb and build the project as quickly as possible. It's just the most financially feasible thing to do. Let me go back here. The recreational amenities, of course, there's a sports park across the street with a community center, gym, and tot lots. That's a major factor in this site being a coveted residential site. The city has invested a huge amount of money there, and that attracts families. So we're going to have a sports park across the street that has everything. We're still going to have a private recreational facility / park within the development. I know one of the other issues that seems to be getting some attention in the city now is parking. Each of the single-family houses will have 2-car garage spaces, no tandem parking, and there's going to be a substantial amount of street parking. I think if you looked up at the colored site plan that's in your package, if your eyes are really good, you can see the faint outlines of parking spaces drawn on the street, but you can also see there's a table that shows the parking that's available, if I can find it. And my eyes aren't good enough, but you can look in the upper right hand. I've got a smaller version of the same thing. Actually, I printed out a bigger version. And this also gives you the size of the lots, the acreage, and the density per acre for the single family program. It's between 6.5 and 7 3/4 roughly. Parking spaces, 2-car garages. We expect that the spaces will all have driveways with aprons that will also accommodate more cars. That will come through the site development plan process, and that'll be something, if that's of interest to the commission will speak at that time about some of those design details. On-street parking, we show another 115 spaces, so it'll be well parked. The other project on 9.5 acres is a blank slate. Somebody will come in at that point and have to comply with whatever the requirements are. CEQA. The project is in the process of going through a CEQA review. Traffic, air quality, and noise studies have been prepared. The city has a protocol for how traffic studies are prepared. It's not tailored to our particular project. It's tailored to all projects. The environmental documents will ultimately land on your desk. It'll be part of what it is that you'll be responsible for reviewing. The one note I would make is that the traffic study shows that a residential project would generate 83% fewer trips than what could be built out for a commercial project. This property, under the planned community zoning, the planning area is entitled to 341,499, not to be precise, square feet of commercial entitlement, and that will generate over 14,000 average daily trips. So, but those will all end up before the Planning Commission, and you'll see the details on that. I'll talk about that more in just a second. Schools. Saddleback Valley Unified School District has experienced declining enrollment. Believe it or not, Not in every school, but overall they have. The enrollment ebbs and flows. The school district gets the fees from development, decides how best to use that money, not the city. The school district is in a long-term business. They don't want to build a school for 10 years of service. They want to build a school that's going to serve for 50 years. Otherwise, they'd rather keep the money and do something else. How do I know that? The school issue was a real hot issue with the opportunity study discussion. And the school district was invited to come down and make a presentation to the city council. And at that presentation, the school district made it clear, look, we understand we've got a kind of a bulge going through of kids, but what happens in a few years when those kids are not there anymore? And now we've got a school, and we really didn't need that school. So they adjust to the ebbs and flows in a different way than maybe parents sometimes would like to see them. But that's just the way they work. And Shea Baker Ranch, which had land, lots of land, we had 380 acres, we could not entice the school district to build a new school with the original projected build-out of the OSA, which was 5,415 units. The build-out is now closer to a little over 4,500 units. It includes all the OSA and Brookfield, Truemark, and our project. So it's not likely they're going to build a new school, and I have no idea where the kids are going to go to for this particular property. It's something that the school district doesn't share, and we would have no control over. I've just found that it's most of the time it doesn't end up you don't end up getting your way, and that was the way with the Shea Baker development, the whole opportunity study area. We of course wanted them to go to specific schools, and the district just said, no thanks. Conclusions. Land use. This is really a choice of land uses, and that's the one thing I want to make clear, because I'm like everybody else. I read the blogs. I see what people are saying, and the choice is residential versus commercial. It is not residential versus nothing. It's residential versus commercial. We have existing entitlement on the property. Something will get built, and so one of the questions for the commission is it's the choice. This is right across the street from the park. That means that those trips for a shopping center would be over 14,000 trips a day. Is going to be competing for the same lane space, getting to the same area as people that are going to the park, because remember, we have one intersection. There's one access point to our project, whatever it is, as well as the as the park. So that's kind of the end of the discussion. I think I've covered everything I wanted to, but so we're here to answer any questions, and particularly to get any input or suggestions that the commission would like to offer.
I want to thank staff, and I want to make sure I get the names right, Mr. Watkins and Mr. Tucker, for your presentation.
Thank you.
So I think it now opens up to questions from the commission.
May I start?
Sure, go ahead.
All right. I've got a few things. First, when I looked at this project, first glance at just the concept itself of residential in this particular property, it seemed like a no-brainer. You've got the largest regional church on one side of the land, for hundreds of miles. You've got what's about to be one of the largest regional sports facilities in at least southern Orange County, if not all of Orange County, directly on, border number 2 of 4. Who wouldn't want to live right between those two amenities? I get that. Residential from that perspective certainly makes sense. I do have some serious concerns with what I'm seeing, some of which you, Mr. Tucker, addressed, at least in cursory form, and I'm going to ask for some more feedback, not necessarily this evening, but so that going forward you know at least where one seat is coming from and what I would like to see. I realize this is a conceptual map, you know, the subdivision, the way it's laid out, it doesn't have the architecture. I understand that. I am looking at some of the corner lots and thinking, I don't know how you get it, you know, without having the bigger map to scale. Maybe I'm wrong, but looking at the smaller drawing, I'm thinking some of these corner lots are going to be really hard to get a two-car apron, just because they look significantly smaller than the ones around them. But again, that may be the scale of the drawing. My biggest concerns are actually, I like the idea of, you know, a gated community. I don't have a problem with that, but I think you're asking for trouble, or at least whoever ends up building it out would be asking for trouble as it's drawn now, because you're putting future, or at least potential future, higher density right on the border of this gated community, but you're asking the you've sold to first on the gated community, who have now moved into a gated community, are comfortable living in their little shell, to allow the high-density project next door to come through their gates and into what appears to be the access on the inside of the gate to that other property.
It's all one community.
Okay.
Yeah, they're all contributing towards the gate. They all have access. They all have access to the recreation lot. So it's one community. It's just going to be segmented into slightly different.
I can understand that. I mean, conceptually, I can understand that. I just think it's going to be a hard sell for the people who buy the single family and have been living there for a couple of years when the condos and/or apartment building is built next door, and they suddenly say, "Hey, wait a minute, this isn't what I signed up for," even though clearly it was. I mean, I get it. I live with CC&Rs, and I have neighbors always telling me on a regular basis, well, this isn't what I signed up for. I said, well, when you bought the place, yeah, you did. I get that, but I'm just saying I think it's a potential headache down the road. It's not even necessarily our headache, it's just my thoughts on the project. My question on parking, you referred to approximately 115 on-street parking locations, and I'll give you benefit because you've stated yourself, you know, with the size of the drawings, you can't necessarily see them. I just want to clarify for my own understanding, you do mean on the internal streets, correct? Not necessarily on Rancho?
That's correct. There's no parking on Rancho.
Okay. Yeah, I just want, like I said, I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding that correctly. And then finally, at this point, my last big concern is, from a marketing standpoint, I would absolutely, if I was in your shoes, sell the heck out of the fact that, hey, we're right across the street from the sports park. From a planner standpoint, that scares me. And the reason it scares me is that's a big wide road on Rancho that we put through. And it's like asking kids to go to the shopping center where Green Earth Coffee is and run across the street to the skate park. It's dangerous. That's why and even though we said don't do it, it happened all the time anyway, and we had to build a fence down the middle. And so that worries me, that you're going to put a community right across the street from the park and say, hey, we've got this great park right here across the street, and even though there's a light at the corner, I'm saying that it's something that scares me as a parent of young children. So.
Well, it actually, as the four-way intersection that we have with the sports park is signalized, so there'll be all the pedestrian movements that will be there, and not only is it signalized, but we're paying half the cost of the signal. When we sold the 15 acres to the city in 2010, we each understood that there needed to be a traffic signal, and the city was, you know, gracious, because they could have said, well, we'll wait for you to come in and then we'll stick you with it. But that's not the way we've dealt with the city for 55 years, or the agencies. They said, look, we need a signal, let's just split it, and that's what we're doing. I think there's maybe an RFP that's in process even now for the design of the signal.
That's my starting point anyway, so I'll yield at this point.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
I had a couple of questions. The emergency access, vehicle access that you're showing on the left side of your map, how do you plan to control that access?
It'll have one of those crash gates. You know, if somebody needs to go through there, they'll have a, you know, the fire authority will have access to it, and if they're the ones that really would need the emergency access, the police would go through the normal route. But if it's blocked off because of a fire, they just, you know, they have a key that they use that's typical, and if that doesn't work, then they run the machine right through it.
So this is something like the gate control that's all paid for by the homeowners association it works in that area? You presuming have a homeowners association there, I presume?
Yes, there will be, but the homeowners association won't have access to that. That's an emergency gate, so it'll be the
So
fire.
who maintains it, though?
The homeowners association, I'm sure, pays to maintain it, but the access is vested in the fire authority.
Okay. Only the fire authority, not the sheriff?
You know, it may be the sheriff, but I don't believe it is.
Okay. I'm just curious. You have several areas here where you show retaining walls. What's the difference in height on the sides of the property where you have the retaining walls?
Well, this is where a big map would come in handy. Right. Want to give me the clicker? Just, you know, with the history of this particular site, it got mined, loosely speaking. It basically got graded down with the material being sold to a 2% slope starting at about 800 feet above sea level at the top end, which is next to the industrial, and to about 755 at Portola. So it's got like a 45-foot fall. And because it's 45 feet over, it's a pretty extended distance. The retaining walls are, I think the highest one we have is 2.5 feet. Now, if you're used to dealing with like what Portola Center had, you know, the Baldwin project, those are like massive walls. The ones that we had at Shea Baker were big walls. They did a beautiful job in treating them, but there was a lot of topography. This site doesn't have any topography. It's just pretty much flat. So if you look at the wall, you know, you'll see some walls in between lots. These are like, you know, 2.5 feet in between these lots. As the site falls, you have retaining walls. Same thing, you know, with some walls up along here underneath the toll road. Those are also 2.5 feet. So we don't really have, you know, a lot of structural walls. We try to steer clear of, you know, retaining walls. They're expensive to build, and planning commissions usually don't like them very well.
Well, somebody has to take care of them eventually.
That's right. It's a homeowners association. So, I mean, as I'm sure a lot of you are in homeowners associations, you understand how that works.
With that problem.
But taking care of a little wall that really is kind of holding up a little bit of dirt is a lot different than taking care of a big wall where if it fails, you have a big problem. And we don't have any big walls. So it won't be seen, and it won't be a future big problem.
You said there's a 25-foot setback between the back of the homes and Rancho Parkway. Did I hear you correctly on that?
No, it's the back of the lots.
Back of the house, 25 feet?
Yeah, so there'll probably be another 10 feet from the back of from the lot to where the house is.
Who do you propose is going to maintain the landscaping on that setback?
It'll all be homeowners association, because it's either them or the city. It's not going to be the city.
No. Okay. On your super pad, well, on the other project here, what's your timing to find a builder for this project? Is you soon, later?
Soon. You know, we're going to put the property on the market. When the entitlements are there, we will go ahead and sell it, and the builder will be the one that comes forward with the particular plans. Now, as a business proposition, time is money to these people. A lot of it's Wall Street money. It's internal rate of return driven. And by doing the subdivision on the left-hand side, it gives the builder an opportunity to start working immediately on a plan. We can't close until at least 90 days after our approval, because the statute of limitations for development agreements and general plans is 90 days. So somebody will be working towards getting actually before the Planning Commission to get their plans approved during that period. The same period of time, they'll start figuring out what's on the other side of the property.
So you presume it's going to be the same builder on both sides?
Well, we're going to sell it to one builder, and what one builder does after that, it's at most 250 units. That's not a lot for these big public builders anymore. I mean, the Shea Baker site, it's referred to as 300 or 2399, but there's like 180 affordable units that'll get built all in one project, and then there's 413 apartment units that will get built all in one project. There's really 1,785 single-family homes. And Shea and Toll haven't chosen to indicate any interest in selling any part of that property, so they're each holding on to 900 lots. This is prime property where somebody other than the Irvine Company controls it. It's in a great marketplace. The school district's terrific. One builder will buy all this, and my bet is that they'll hold on and build it all so that they have a foothold in South Orange County for a little while.
Well, I certainly agree it's a prime location for residential. I don't think you could ask for much better in terms of amenities.
Well, that's kind of, as soon as the city had an idea of a park there, it became very, very clear. The other thing, too, I'd just like to mention, Foothill Town Center it's a good place. It's a great amenity for all these new homes, but the internet is gobbling up customers faster than Lake Forest is producing them with new housing. So it's just, a better use really to keep the commercial core up in this area strong, because they've got some vacancy up there, and they're, I'm in the shopping center development business. Otherwise, I'd be the one telling you all about what I was going to build here. But it's a struggle now for a lot of these brick and mortar retails, because it's easier to click than to get in your car and go someplace.
So is the only recreational space in this, is that just in this one little square here that's on the left side?
Yes.
Of the building?
Well, maybe. It's the only one on the left side. On the right side, the developer will come in and come up with its own plan, and it could end up with deciding that it would like to have something over there. I didn't mention, by the way, we've got this big old thing way over here in the corner, which isn't recreational at all, but it is. It's our water quality detention basin. So all the impervious surfaces that we create, the site will be drained and graded so that it all drains over into that corner. And during the earlier storms, which aren't the bigger storms, but do take the most pollution with them because the parking lots haven't been washed off with rain before, it will go into that facility and it will have an opportunity to percolate. Now, when you get to the big storm flows and that thing fills up, there's an overflow pipe that then goes into a pipe on Portola, goes underneath Rancho and into the riparian area in the sports park, into the creek.
So you plan when it's dry, they're going to do like they did at the Heroes Park or something, they'll grass it out or do something? So
I don't think so. I think it'll, my bet is that and this will be something the homeowners association will want to do because it's not public land, is they'll want to fence it and forget about it. So it'll be vegetated, and I have one of those in a shopping center, and it's just like a jungle in there. It's unbelievable what happens over time, how thick the vegetation gets, because they every time there's any water in any street anywhere, it ends up going there because it's carrying the residues of car wash or pets or whatever. They don't want it to go to the the water bodies anymore. So that's where it goes.
Well, thank you very much. It's a very nice presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Commissioner Fuentes?
Thank you, Chairman Hamilton. Well, I wanted to thank Mr. Tucker and Mr. Watkins. I did go to the site today and had a nice tour. I do have a question that I failed to answer today. Can you help me with the size of the lot and compare it to, say, like something that the builders have built over in Baker Ranch?
Well, it's comparable. I mean, basically what, and once again, this is a business proposition as opposed to something planning commissions typically rule on, but because of the special location and views of the Shea Baker site, it's going to be more valuable, more expensive property. But the product that gets built there is going to end up being here is going to be some of the same type of product that's being built over on the other side of the ranch. It'll just be at a better price point where somebody is, wants the house and wants to live across from the sports park and wants the discount. So lot sizes will be comparable to those same neighborhoods over here. And once again, I apologize for this, but if you look on, and you may not be able to see it, it just may kind of be blurry, but if you look on the right side of the track map, I don't even think it shows up here. And I'm not sure if does it show in there's all the lot sizes are listed.
Yes,
So it's
but I
comparable.
don't remember what they are over at.
They're basically the same for the same product type. For the single family detached, ours are 3,500 square foot minimum. They average about 4,000, and it just depends on as you turn corners the various sizes. So, and that's my recollection, Dan. That's about the size for the single family detached in Shea Baker Ranch.
It is. Home sizes will generally range from 2,100 to 2,800 square feet, and the two neighborhoods planned on the left side of the map are generally consistent with the neighborhoods that Toll Brothers is currently building at Baker Ranch. So, visited the Baker Ranch site. What you see there from a lot size perspective is very similar to what you.
Thank you. That's what I was wondering. And then with regards to the gated community, or the gate into this community, I just thought maybe that might be a plus for the homeowners with regards to a huge sports park across the way. And if there's a large event there, the gate is going to keep those that are not a part of the community out. And that would probably help the city in the long run.
It actually was the, we came in and thought, well, Shea Baker Ranch is public streets, this will be public streets, and actually the city engineer said that'd be a bad idea because you're going to overflow parking from the park that's going to go in there, and if it's public, we can't tell them they can't park there. So it's just going to create a problem. You better make these private so that you can control the streets, and at that point it was kind of like, okay, we'll just go ahead and and gate them.
Thank you. Nice presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Questions? Commissioner Verplank.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank both Mr. Watkins and Mr. Tucker for coming tonight. Enjoyed the presentation too, and I think it's obvious that the Baker family has been an integral part of building of the city of Lake Forest, and that's commendable. As I've listened to the presentations and listened to my fellow commissioners, my question is, what additional stresses on natural resources, if any, have you guys in any of your study, have you looked at anything? Water is in short supply, and we are committed to building a certain number of units in the city already. And I'm not opposed to the project, don't misunderstand that in what I'm seeing right now. I'm just wondering what additional, because we've already added another 220 plus units that were not part of OSA, and so this wasn't part of OSA, and now we're looking at another 250 units. I'm just curious.
Well, just a historical point, it actually was part of OSA. We were in the OSA for quite a period of time. We paid a fair amount of money towards it, but it got a little complicated because this site is not in partnership with Shea. This is just the Baker family. And the other site was. We started negotiations with the school district, with the city with respect to fees and the type of product at the time that we anticipated we could put on this property, it started not making sense. And this was kind of identified as, well, that's where the sports park will go if we can't find any place else to put it. So at that point, we just thought maybe we'd be better off not being part. So if you actually go look at the program EIR for the OSA, you'll see us in there. So all the studies dealt with this property as residential, including the financial study. So everything assumed in that OSA that this was going to be residential. Now, the alternative that the city ultimately picked was one that didn't include this one, because we had said, you know what, we don't really want to carry on with this. As far as the resources are concerned, it's always an issue. You have to go get a will serve letter before you can move very far on these things, and we have a will serve letter from Irvine Ranch Water District, which we think is thoroughly appropriate, since that whole water district for this area of town was all founded by Baker Ranch to begin with. We hope at least they'll hold out a little water for us.
Okay. All right. Yeah. That's the only question I have at this time, and we'll see where this takes us in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess it's my turn for a few questions.
Okay.
Thank you again for your presentation. So I guess I have a follow-up question to your OSA comments. Was traffic considered in that OSA?
The EIR?
Yes.
Yes.
I assumed it did, but I just wanted to make sure for the record.
It was, and while you brought up the topic, I didn't want to bore you with all the details. If you give me an inch here, I'm going to take a little bit of a mile. But these projects, and ours in particular on the Shea Baker Ranch, our contribution just in the developer impact fee is about $55 million to the sports park, City Hall, and in addition to that, there's this animal that the city invented as part of the OSA process called LIFTM, Lake Forest Traffic Mitigation Program, and that has additional fees that are to be paid as building permits are issued, because the city went in and did a traffic study as part of the EIR that identified whatever issues could come up later. And they didn't even have to be impacts. Technically they didn't have to be significant impacts. They just had to be something that, quite frankly, he's not here anymore, that Bob Woodings thought would be a good idea to make an improvement there too. So we ended up with like 12 intersections, 15 intersections. There are 19 intersections that get improved with monies as development fees are paid. And this project, when I mentioned that we have to have a development agreement, that's code for we're going to pay a public benefit fee that's going to be at least comparable to what the others pay. So you don't need to be a mathematician to figure out that at least $30,000 times 250 units is a lot of money, and that goes to pay for the sports park and the other improvements that are going on in the city at this point.
I do have a few other questions. So again, 83% of the traffic that was entitled under the previous zoning or the existing
Current,
zoning,
yeah.
that I guess potentially will be an old zoning, but it's the existing zoning. So you're lower than in traffic than your existing zoning.
Considerably lower. Now, in all honesty, there's a little bit of directionality difference, because people leave in the morning and come back in the afternoon in residential and commercial. It's retail, it ends up, they're coming and going all day. They're particularly coming and going on weekends and peak hours. They combine trips to do that. But yes, when you go through and do the traffic studies, and once again, everybody does these things by the same protocol. So, and they judge them by the same statistical way of doing it. This is throughout the county. This is throughout the state. It's not like Lake Forest is unique. They don't have a special way to say, well, let's let these guys, build till the cows come home, and other cities treat it differently. They don't. They basically are the same protocols. So in this particular case, use that protocol. The trips would be over 14,000 if it's a commercial property. That's average daily trips, and it would be under 2,500 if it's a residential property of 250 units. The site can be, you have to judge it as if it's 250. Do I think it's going to be 250? I'd bet that it's not going to be. But for your purposes, it's 250. And if somebody comes in and asks for 251 units, they have to come back and go through the entire process because we haven't studied it for 251 units. We've studied it for 250, so it can't exceed that.
So there was one, I think I'm a little confused now. So is the traffic that you're proposing under this project going to be 83% less, or is it going to be 83% of the existing zoning?
No, it's going to be 83% less than what the existing zoning would allow.
So then it's going to be 17% of the existing entitlement.
That's
so you're going to traffic by
83%.
Almost 1/6, by
5/6.
Yeah, 5/6. So it's going to be 1/6 of what the That's a significant reduction.
Well, it is, and that's
Six
that really
times reduction.
But that's residential versus commercial, and people that don't deal in this realm, they of course it's kind of like, well, that can't possibly be right. That was one of the things that the city, had in front of it, because the OSA entitlement was for 7.5 million square feet of commercial. Commercial carries a lot more traffic. Now, not all that commercial is going to be a shopping center. There's places that are, have industrial buildings on them that you'd never think is a shopping center. Our site could be a shopping center. I don't think it'd be a good idea, but it could be because of its location.
Okay, so I think I've addressed traffic. I want to talk about parking, and this is probably to staff. I know in the report that would come to us with the actual application where we'd approve, you have the permitted, the calculation. Have you done any preliminary? The applicant said the parking is adequate. Do you have an opinion to that? I just thought I'd ask.
Yes, in accordance with today's code where you have 2 covered spaces plus a guest requirement, we find even in the review of the Shea projects that we were, in excess of 6 spaces per unit. So a typical single-family subdivision with parking on both sides of a street is going to yield significant parking well in excess of today's code, because we do count the parking on the street. They're required to have parking on each individual lot, the covered parking under the code, and the 2-car garage or 3-car, whatever they provide, does that. But I think what's really key when we look at the developments is parking on a public street provides an adequate supply of residential parking in the single-family neighborhoods.
Okay.
There are different ways to design these subdivisions too. You can do narrower streets and try to jam in more lots, and you not have the on-street parking and just try to get away with a minimal amount of parking. We did the opposite. We didn't attempt to narrow down the streets to try to figure out where to put more lots in. We felt like we listened to hearings, so we heard all the conversation that's been going on around parking.
Thank you. So I'm looking at kind of the green areas on the conceptual site plan. And I have a question. It looks like on the public side, if you will, of the gate, there looks like there's a green area that is between parcel 92 and 93 that potentially is that going to be utilized for foot traffic exiting the inner those inner 3 islands, to the ability for someone to walk from inside the project to the sports park? Is that how? That green area is?
You're probably at site development permit level questions, and somebody's going to have to come in with a plan to see how to do that. We haven't designed it with that level of detail. And I don't know, it may be a sewer easement too. Okay, yeah, I think it may be I think it is sewer. That's a simpler. That's probably not the the explanation you were looking for, but I think that's a sewer easement and it may not even be green, or maybe the architect painted it green and There's going to be pipes underneath it, would be my guess.
Okay. I'm a fan of people walking. I think also it could potentially alleviate some parking issues at the sports park.
Sure.
If people were to walk from this development over to the sports park instead of always being, you know, hey, I live on spot 36, and for me to, if you see 36, that's like way in the corner, backs up the Rancho. It's the furthest from the sports park. You know, if they wanted to walk theoretically, and there weren't an access point directly to maybe a sidewalk on Rancho, they have to walk all the way, almost in the direction directly toward, you know, the toll road, then go along that long road that's between plots or site 1 to 22, then get to the road to where the gate is. I mean, that would be just quite some walk for them. So I would like to see some access for the sites 23 to 36 and maybe 46 to 37. I guess 47 and some of those would walk out, maybe have some kind of access where you said that the crash gate was.
Well, the crash gate could certainly have a man gate there. That would be pretty easy.
Have some kind of pedestrian access. That would be my humble opinion. And then if you allow some access between 92 and 93, that allows some of the interior folks to be able to walk to the sports park. So that's my, you know, I'm assuming a lot of people are going to want to be at the sports park, and having the ability to walk from this project to the sports park actually would alleviate some parking issues, I think, at the sports park. So along those lines, I also want to ensure the safety of those so that they're not just crossing the median. I think some have touched on this. And so what are your plans for the median height? Are you planning like a potential fence? I mean, I just see this being almost, you know, a mirror of the skate park, and having those. I think Commissioner Brower mentioned this. So are we planning some kind of fence? Because I could see people trying to park even on, you know, is this, let me ask staff, is the median part of this application, or is the city in charge of that?
No, the median is in the city's public right-of-way.
Okay. So it's not going to be handled by the applicant?
No, but certainly if they provide an access point, we'll analyze that in the environmental document and look at what would be needed if that was a proposal.
And that may be a reason why to concentrate all the pedestrian access to the traffic signal as well. I mean, you can see that these you know, these little wrinkles. That's what workshops are great for. Is it brings out issues, and then you can go talk to the staff and see, okay, that was sounds like a good idea in one way. Is it a good idea in all ways? We'll just ask about it.
I mean, my humble opinion would be, again, to get similar type fencing that's on Lake Forest between like the Home Depot Center, so that people don't try to either on-street parking or, you know, sneaking, you know, across that median to get to the sports park.
Yeah, my guess is the city will wait probably to
Well,
see it.
our traffic engineer will look at
We'll
that,
look at it.
and as Mr. Tucker mentioned, we would certainly want people crossing at the signal. So getting them out onto the street where there isn't a signal may start us down that road where we have to look at something like that. But we'll look at that through the entire environmental document and as we get more details on the site plan.
All right, I think I just have one more, and that is, do you have any expectation or just an estimate of how many jobs you think this project might bring to the city?
I really don't. I mean, it's the city, you know, in a perverse sort of way, was very lucky to have had the airport there, because there was an awful lot of commercial that got built that would have never been built and isn't built in adjoining cities, and it's because of the noise and crash zones. So, you know, I'm not sure this project's going to bring in jobs. These are going to be for residents, and hopefully, you know, some of them will be working in those those buildings that are nearby.
Thanks again for your presentation.
Thank you.
And are there any other questions of staff applicant from the commission?
In your recreation, half an acre, it looks like there's the only provision for parking around that recreation area is actually on the street.
Well, it hasn't been designed, and it has to go through the SDP process, which means it's going to come back to the commission. Somebody's going to come up with a plan, and if it's going to be mostly a park, there probably isn't going to be much in the way of parking. And if they're going to have more pool and fitness types of facilities, they're going to have more parking. So it's going to have to pass scrutiny with this body when the actual plan comes up.
Have you had any inkling in your secret analysis about the amount of noise that gets generated off of Rancho Parkway and Portola Parkway?
Yes.
Project?
Yes. We have mitigation measures in the noise study, and my recollection is a Rancho and Portola, it's just kind of a typical 6-foot wall. The toll road is different. The toll road at the very corner of the property up here, it starts at 10 feet because the lots are actually flush with the toll road there. Mm-hmm. But the toll road stays at the same elevation. The property, remember I said it falls 45 feet. So it goes from 10 feet and goes for 100 feet, 150 feet, and then it goes to 8 feet, and then it goes to 6 feet. And by the middle of the site, about there's no requirement for sound mitigation walls. Of course, there'll be a wall that goes around the development just because for security, and that's what homeowners want. But it's not noise driven. So the noise report indicates that the noise can all be brought to the required level.
Good. Thank you very much. I appreciate your presentation. Excellent job.
Thank you.
All right, last chance for commissioner comments or commissioner questions. All right, I'd like to open the public hearing. I have 2 speaker cards. If anyone else wants to speak on this topic, if you could please fill out one of these peach City of Lake Forest request to speak cards with your name and city of residence on them. When you please come and before us to speak, if you can also state your name and your city of residence. And so I think my first one is a Mr. Jim. I'm gonna have a hard time with the last name. Gardner, maybe? And as Jim is coming, just want to remind the speakers that there are opportunities to speak for 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Jim Gardner, and congratulations. I haven't been before you since you're the chairman. Everybody who sat in that seat has put the well-being of the city before projects and business, and I hope you'll carry on that grand tradition. I'm a little upset and a little disturbed. Everybody here is carving the beast, and nobody's found it yet. This is a change to the general plan, and long before you worry about the size of the wall and where the kid's going to go, we need to be considering, should this go from commercial to residential? As you know, we've already lost 80 acres of residential to the Trumark and Brookfield project last year. During that project, the staff, very rightfully so, wanted to have a study done, an independent study, of the differences between commercial and residential and at this point in the city's history. Why? Because the recession is lifting. Why? Because there are 4,700 new homes coming into the area with 10,000 new consumers. If you will recall from that saga, the developers refused to do it despite your own planning commission's request that they do that. So my first recommendation would be that you do what you wanted to do originally with Brookfield and Trumark and get that independent study of where is the city right now and what is the city's best benefit is it going to commercial or residential? I think that's vital. And when I say an independent study, I don't mean go hire a firm that works for developers who'll give you a report that you should do what the developers do. Go to an independent firm. And actually, I'd suggest that you try to go to the university, who has no horse in that race. Now to something that Commissioner Verplank hinted at. Water, electricity, we're already short of water. We already have brownout days. This is without 4,700 new homes. We have these problems already. We have traffic problems. We have school problems, and I understand they did their best efforts to deal with the school, but the fact is we didn't deal successfully with the school. Nobody knows what's going to happen to those kids. Nobody knows. Nobody knows what's going to happen to the traffic. Nobody knows how our libraries and post office are going to be impacted with the 4,700 new homes. Why on earth, even if the independent study done by the people say we should go to residential, with what's in the pipeline, nobody knows what's going to happen. Maybe at some time in the future, when we know what's going to happen, this would be a great project. I'm not opposed to the project. It just seems to me there are fundamental priority questions that need to be asked first. Let's not squeeze a thin mint into the fat man's mouth so that he explodes. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment, and I meant to say that I believe I speak for all of us here on the commission by saying we truly appreciate all comments. One other thing I wanted to mention too was to ensure the public hearing runs smoothly in accordance with approved procedures. Staff and the commission may address any applicable comments or questions at the end of the time that the public has the opportunity to speak. So thank you for that. So thank you, Mr. Gardner. And I think the next person is Mr. Tim Morissette.
So I'm opposed to the project. I'm opposed from changing it from commercial to residential. And I first of all have to thank the Baker family. I didn't know about their generosity. I've lived in the community for 20 years. We bought Foothill Ranch. It would be 20 years this July. But to have you do everything your family has done is great. And the planner here, I think, is more of a salesman. I think, I'm in a real estate business. I want to hire him to sell my property. He went through everything that the Baker family has done, and if I was you guys, I'd lay down for everything. I'd just say, hey, you've done so much, let's go ahead and approve this. But again, this is what I use for my presentation. When people come to my open houses, I want to show them the small town feel of Foothill Ranch, which this area is part of what I consider the Foothill Ranch area where I live, which is part of Lake Forest. So here you have prime area. Here you have commercial, it's zone commercial, our forefathers did. And here you have a piece of land here by the toll road that now you want to put residential in. Now I think the Planning Commission has 2 strikes against them already. The auto center condos and the auto center houses. And I think this could be a 3rd strike against you. Back in Indiana, I used to work as a butcher when I was a kid. And we always, the leavings, the fat and the gristle and stuff, always went into a pile, and that's what they made sausage out of. I think this is the leavings here. This is not prime property. This is like the ugly duckling of the group of the Baker family. I don't know. But to put half people down here, what's the quality of life that we allow people to live in? Next to a toll road, next to a 6-lane highway, next to a sports park where my grandson might be saying, hitting the home, go Timmy, go, backs up to commercial. I just don't see that, I think that we should be not so pro-business. I see everyone here as pro-business, and I wish you were more pro-people, where you had nicer developments, which we have coming up. We have some great projects But one Baker Ranch with its small lot sets a precedent. Foothill Ranch originally was about 5,000 square foot for each lot. You know, I'm on a 14,000 square foot lot. Now we're talking 3,000 up against the toll road. I think it's, you know, I love the Baker family after tonight. I almost didn't want to speak after hearing this gentleman speak, but I oppose it because I think it's going to be, I don't agree with the fact that it's a great residential area. I sell real estate. How are you going to sell something that has these difficulties with it? The noise, the lights, I just don't see it. And again, we've gone through this before with the auto center condos. Please think about the people and don't leave us with just the leavings. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Again, I want to ensure everyone has an opportunity to speak. I only have 2 request forms. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak? Thank you. And Ms. Nelson?
I would just like to say I'm opposed to this project simply because I've lived in Foothill Ranch for 22 years, and I feel like my quality of life is going down with this commission allowing people to build every place where auto dealerships are, and people are just every place. And I also feel like no one is thinking about the people. I've been paying Melrose for 22 years. I was told it would be 20 years. And now I don't know when it will end because no one else seemed to be paying for schools around here. And Foothill Ranch is just stuck with paying Melrose for year after year after year. And no one can give us a reason or when it's going to end for us because they can tell us to go as long as they want it to go. And so I think that before you let these builders build homes, you need to set aside money for schools and just stop allowing them to throw money at the city. I just feel like a decision has already been made by this commission with all the questions that you've asked them, that your decision is already made. And that's my feeling. I just feel like we're just here for no reason at all, that your minds are already made up because of the little things you're talking about. This little, is this going to be a sewer? Is this going to, you're not talking about people. You're talking about handing stuff over to them. And it just feel like people are forgotten in this situation. It's all about the money and who can throw it at the city the fastest.
Thank you for your comments. And I believe we have another speaker request form for Mr. Wayne Heffman.
Yes, thank you. And like Mr. Morris said, I am also surprised at how generous the Baker family has been. And I know how hard it would be if I had to give up a piece of my property in Foothill Ranch and allow access for roads or schools or other things. One of the things I heard the commission ask about is whether it would be zoning just for commercial or zoning just for residential, that this is the change they're considering. But I didn't hear any other changes for zoning for a school. Now it seems to me I'm hearing from other opposed individuals that we have to account for our children and where they're going. How will they cross that road? I don't hear the developers saying, well, we can put an overpass that'll go over the road so that the kids can go from the park to the residential area. I hear the questions about the noise, but the noise level is only how it will impact the 115 homes that are going in. Not that we don't have to put the 115 homes there, because the noise quality of the extra 250 that'll go there will impact the residents that already live here. Residents that can't get down Bake Parkway, that can't get down Alton, which will be shut down for 2 months. Because again, planning should mean planning in advance for the problems. But I don't see that happening. They open Alton up and then they have to shut down for 2 months, which impacts the residents. Now we pay, as Mrs. Nelson said, we pay high taxes. We want schools. And now just think with some vision, where would a school be best located? Right there at that property, right across from a sports park, with a walkway where kids can go from the school over to the park that they're putting in. What a perfect place. The Baker family can dedicate an area for a school. That'll, for all the 5,000 homeowners that were here, for the new 5,000 that are going in, for which will be 10,000, and then the extra 250 here, 400 here, and squeeze another 20 in that law, and by the time you're done, you have 25,000 homes with children that can't get across the street and no school to go to. I just think that when we're considering a change, we should consider all of the options that are going to impact the quality of life. Thank you. I get my 3 minutes is up.
And thank you, Mr. Heffman, for your comments, too. Is there anyone else that wants to address the commission from the public? All right, seeing none, I think let's bring it back to the commission for any additional comments or questions of staff.
One of the things that we, as a city and as a commission, really encourage, and you're here because you want to be here, and I wanted to address the comment that it seems like a decision has already been made, and this is my 10th year on the commission, and I don't believe that a decision has been made here tonight. I want to just try to set those fears at ease if I can. This is the first step in us getting to know about this project, and for you as the public getting to know the project. And there's so many other steps that have to come forward. I have no idea what the outcome's going to be. Nor does anyone up here know what the outcome's going to be at this point in time. So your comments are truly welcome. All of your comments are truly welcome. And I think, as has already been indicated, some people have now come to a realization, myself being among them, how much the Baker family's done in our city. But that does not constitute in itself a rubber stamp approval of a project. That's just an acknowledgement of what one family has done to add value into our city. I appreciate the comments that were just recently made about possibly making this a school site. We have no control over the Saddleback Valley School District, but we certainly as a city can make recommendations, and what they do with those, we don't know. It's already been talked about that the school district operates off of an ebb and a flow of the enrollments, and those are all indeterminate at this time. So I'm grateful that you're all here, and I'm looking forward to future comments and opportunities. I know Mr. Morissette was here when the other two projects, the infill projects, were discussed. I don't know if any of you were here when the Portola project was here. It took close to a year just to get the retaining walls and the grading plan and the traffic pattern even to an acceptable position where the city and the residents could work with that. So there's a lot of work yet to be done with this project.
I also would like to thank all of the residents who came and spoke tonight. I ended up here myself after many meetings on that side, both at the Planning Commission level and at the more frequently at the city. My wife used to say, if you're not willing to stand up and say something about it, then don't tell me, because I don't want to hear it. And so now I think she's wishing she had just said stop talking. But She gave me an either or, and I chose to try to do something about it. I agree with a lot of the comments that were made, especially the last speaker, and I apologize, I'm terrible with names. I had a meeting earlier today with some of the staff where we talked specifically about my concerns that why aren't we looking at least part of this project being a school site? Maybe the site that's currently a super pad could be a small school. And one of the things that I learned, and I've heard it over the years in different capacities, but now seeing it in an actual real-world application, it kind of drove it home for me. And that's, as we went through the Shea Baker process, and the speaker touched on it, we have the applicant touched on it. Part of the process of the OSA projects as they go forward is that we've required these development agreements. The reason that we have the development agreements is because we have a state mandate that says you can only get so much. You can only require so much from a developer, from an applicant, in order to approve a project. Unless you negotiate an agreement that both sides are okay with, and then you still have some limits, but it's considerably more flexibility for the city to be able to be fiscally responsible and plan for perceived future issues. As we went through the Shea Baker process, we said, okay, we've got a need for a development agreement, and before we'll enter into it, we know that the schools are going to be an issue, we know the schools are going to be impacted. Go talk to the school district, get an agreement with them, and come back to us when that's in place, because there's no point in us approving anything if the schools aren't on board. Hopefully I'm remembering correctly how this all went down. Much of it was before my tenure on this side of the dais. But the end result is that the school district got a considerable, probably almost double what they would have under the statutory scheme from the developers in order to get their approvals. The problem is, even though they got this big chunk of money that went to the Saddleback Valley Unified School District, we as a city can't, we can say, and we'd like you to spend it here on, you're getting it from development in our boundaries, please spend it in our boundaries. And they can very easily say, you know what, we got a building in Mission Viejo we want to renovate, we don't care what you think. We have no control. It frustrates the crap out of me. It's the one issue that may lead to me eventually running for some form of public office if I ever do. It's more likely to be city council, school district than anything else, because I've got a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, and it's an issue that drives me batty that we have no control. But unfortunately, it's the sad reality. And so all we can do is, we do our best, and we can, and does that mean that I'm predisposed to approving this because we can't do any better? No, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying we look at all our options and we try to do it in the best fiscally responsible way that we can, so that the overall impact to the city as a whole is the positive impact is maximized and any detrimental impact is minimized. Yeah, and are we going to get it right every time? I certainly hope so, but I doubt it. I'm on the panel, so there's a good chance we're going to mess something up. But I'm only one vote, so hopefully they'll stop me from messing things up too much. But that said, I really do appreciate everybody being here, even people who I don't necessarily agree with on every issue. Dr. Gardner and I have had our share of conversations where we've battled it out, outside of the dais, and I don't always agree with him. He doesn't always agree with me. I do respect him. I think he respects me, and that at the end of the day, I know that we both have the best interests of the city at heart, and that's really what it comes down to. And so I just wanted to share a little bit of the background and tell you how much I appreciate you coming down.
Go ahead.
Well, I certainly appreciate all the residents' comments tonight, especially Wayne's comments. I thought that was particularly insightful from your perspective. I have 6 children that go to school in the Saddleback Valley School District here in the city. I'm as frustrated as you are with the way the city, or with the way the school district has treated most of the residents. They're a special interest district. They do what they want. They're not responsible to anybody else but themselves. And I understand the developer's frustration. They pay them a lot of money, and there's no guarantee they'll ever get anything, which I'm sure is a difficult thing for the Baker family to put up all that money, and then the city says, well, we'll think about it, but don't count on it. In terms of my position on this project, I have not made a decision one way or the other. Frankly, I don't have enough information. I think there are probably some other things that we could look at in terms of how this project comes together. I also understand that the developers put up a whole bunch of money to take it to this stage, and at this point I'm sure they'd like to not see it go away. But on the other hand, I also agree we have to look at the interest of the citizens that live here. And that may mean that the project changes a little bit. I don't know. Like I said, we're not in the position yet we can make a decision one way or the other. I'm still real concerned about the super pad and what happens to that, because that may well change the demeanor of the whole project. In terms of school there, I think, yeah, a school probably would be a very nice idea. I'd like to see it happen. I don't know whether the school district will ever pay for it or not. I mean, my grandchildren got bused to Cordillera from the middle of Lake Forest for a year and a half because there was no place to put them in La Madera or Rancho Cañada. I was totally frustrated with that one. But, you know, I think it's good. I think we should continue to put pressure on the school district to do something realistic and not force kids to be moved all over the city to go to school. But that's sort of in their court, and the only way we're going to change that is with a lot of public opinion. So that's kind of my situation. I think, you know, where the project sits right now, it's a reasonable use of the property. Maybe it's not the best. I think we need to see more of the CEQA studies and the other things that are out there before we make a decision one way or the other. I mean, it's a piece of property that's surrounded by 4 significant noise generators. And I've seen other CEQA studies that make me wonder about exactly how they came up with their conclusions. So I want to see more information before I make a final decision on it. I think that I'd also like to see what other possible options might be for that property. I think in terms of resources, you put a commercial project in there, you're going to consume a whole lot more electricity, water, and gas and everything else than in a residential situation. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things to look at here, and my opinion is I'm just not sure yet. So, not enough information. But I do appreciate everyone's comment. I appreciate the Baker family's generosity. Also, I had not realized it had been to that degree. We've lived here 30-some years, and your contribution to the community is just really, really amazing. And I'm not sure a lot of people would have done that. And I commend you for it. And I think, you know, that's really wonderful that your families had that kind of concern for the community. Again, I think we're real early in this project to be making a lot of decisions, so I think we just have to let things go. So, but again, I want to thank everyone for coming and participating and sharing your feelings, because you make a better decision on how to vote on this project. So, thank you very much.
I think I'll go next. For public speakers, the applicants, appreciate all your comments. It's definitely we're very receptive, and you can I think tell that from some of the commissioners' comments. I too want to say I didn't realize I think the contribution that the Baker family has made over the years. I think that's quite commendable, quite commendable. In the same token, I think I think you would agree that doesn't entitle you to anything here today. But again, thank you very much for your contribution. I think it's amazing. I share the same frustration I think that some of the other planning commissioners have expressed and the public has expressed with Saddleback Valley Unified. And you know, not to inflame or to pick a fight or anything like that, but I would like to go to the next meeting that Saddleback Valley Unified has, and if anyone would like to join me, I think we could at least express our opinion in a peaceful way at that venue. And I think something that I think that has also been discussed in the past is that Saddleback Unified, Saddleback Valley Unified has had a presentation, I think, here before the Planning Commission in the past, and maybe we can invite them back to have people hear their explanation, and I think that could be an important venue to hear directly from them. I know people probably want to get going, but I just want to talk about water for like 10 seconds. I don't know if you've seen in the paper, there's mandatory water conservation up in Sacramento. There's some water districts up in the Sacramento area that have shut off water deliveries. This year might be the first year that there's any no water deliveries to Southern California from Sacramento. However, you don't hear any of issues here. Irvine Ranch, we haven't had any mandatory conservation or mandatory cutbacks. I think that's the same in some of the other area water districts in Southern California. And I think that's because of the great leadership by the Metropolitan Water District in building some huge reservoirs in kind of the Hemet area. So I think as water goes, I've kind of gone on 4 or 5 water tours in the last 2 or 3 years, and some of the education, I just wanted to share that. I too don't have any predetermined decision. I think if maybe my question tonight could have been phrased more, if the project comes before us and you apply, in no way did I mean to signal any type of decision. I have not made a decision either. And lastly, I just wanted to say, Ms. Nelson, have you, and this is not a question, sorry, I think I was just going to say if maybe city staff could reach out to her and maybe help her with her Melrose question. I definitely hear your comment on that. Well, I don't know if this is the right venue to have a conversation, but I would implore staff to reach out to her, and I would like to hear what the explanation is too. I think it's important, and I've actually heard from another resident in Foothill Ranch their concern about this, and I think that's just something that I would like to see if we could help address that. So let me make sure I have everything. All right, that's all I had. Any other comments? All right, I think that concludes agenda item number 2. Again, thank you everybody for your comments. So we'll move on to and close the public hearing, I guess. So we'll go on to agenda item number 3, Planning 101, and I think we'll have a presentation from the Assistant City Attorney.
That we do. So Mal is going to go over here to the podium, and he will be providing an overview of the applications, permits, and entitlements that are reviewed by the Planning Commission.
Mr. Chairman, Planning Commissioners, good to see you again. This will be a pretty quick training tonight. The intent is just to go over the basic entitlements that we frequently review to give you an idea of the underlying legal issues associated with them, also to give the public an idea of those same legal issues and hopefully educate all of us, and so both you as a commission and the public understand what business is being transacted, the legal foundation for that business, and the steps that are required for the approval of certain entitlements, as well as any legal issues that are associated. So we'll move through these slides pretty quickly tonight. First and foremost, of course, is the general plan. The general plan has been defined by case law as the constitution for all future development. Now, the general plan in Lake Forest will be updated, I believe, it starts within a year or so. That is a significant undertaking because it sets the Constitution, the path forward for all development for the next several years. The map on the right-hand side is the land use policy map, which is part of the general plan. That provides the general land use designations for all properties within the city. It shows you where you can build what types of projects. And it provides the foundation for the zoning code, which then provides greater specificity regarding what can and what can't be built and the standards to which it should be built. So that takes us to zoning. This is all very 101. It's all review for all of you, I'm sure. So zoning, of course, builds on and must be consistent with the general plan. So let's say you have a general plan designation of commercial. You cannot have on top of that commercial a zoning code designation of residential, because that's inconsistent. That is illegal. So the commercial general plan has to have overlaid on it a commercial zoning code designation, right? There has to be consistency. It's called vertical consistency. It builds on each other. The zoning code then provides greater specificity regarding the permitted uses within the general planization areas. And we'll get to the zoning code tables that show you exactly which uses can be used in which areas. The zoning code also, in addition to telling you what types of uses can be developed in specific areas, gives you development standards, setbacks, density, parking, those types of issues that we discuss in detail when it comes to projects before you. And really it's the source book for all development projects. We rarely look at the general plan when it comes to actual development. We look at the zoning code because if the zoning code has been adopted, it's been deemed consistent with the general plan already. Now we have to make that finding, general plan consistency, with every entitlement that comes before you. So it's an issue that we look at, but really the zoning code is what we always come back to. This is just an excerpt from the zoning code land use matrix. If you want to know if a specific use is permitted, conditionally permitted, permitted as an accessory use, temporarily permitted, or permitted with a site development permit, or not permitted, in any land use category, you turn to the zoning code land use matrix in Title IX of the code. And this lays out for several pages all of the uses. You can see there, let's just take, what's a good one there? Athletic club. So the commercial zone, industrial zone, PA, you have all the commercial zones right here. In the first, it's permitted. The U is with the use permit. X is not permitted, permitted, not permitted, not permitted, not permitted. And so you can go zone by zone and understand what specific uses are permitted, are not, and what entitlements may be required. There's also a temporary use permit. I actually cut and pasted. You can see there's Christmas trees sales facility. That's out of alphabetical order. So I cut and pasted there to put a T in there so you can see there is one additional category. So you've got site development permits, use permits, permitted as of right, and temporary use permit, as well as accessory uses. If you have questions while we're going, please feel free to interrupt me as well. Okay, so a very rudimentary pyramid here. The way that entitlements work is they build upon each other. The baseline, of course, the foundation for that pyramid is the general plan. Everything rests on the general plan and must be consistent with the general plan, or else the building falls down. You go general plan, then you go zoning code. The zoning code, of course, has the specificity. Then you have the entitlements, which is the third layer, and the very capstone would be any conditions that you impose on the entitlements. There has to be consistency all the way up, or else the building falls. Okay? Okay. So, with that said, we will move into the entitlements that we deal with on a consistent basis. These are known as entitlements because a property is entitled or allowed to have certain uses. We just had a presentation by the Baker family, and they mentioned that their property is currently entitled for commercial development. They could build their property with no GPA, no zone change, I think just a site development permit, and build out at commercial. They're entitled like a child is entitled, right, to have that project on there. They're also entitled to come in and ask for other entitlements, if you will, but they have to get a GPA and a zone change. There are other steps to be taken. So the first entitlement that you never deal with, but that you should be aware of, is the permitted use. You don't deal with this because the permitted use is exactly what it sounds like. This is a use the property is permitted to partake of. This is dealt with normally at staff level. So it's an absolute entitlement for the property owner. They may have to, well, they're going to have to pull building permits, maybe sometimes an SDP, but we'll get to that. These are subject only to the applicable development standards in the zoning code: setback standards, parking standards, density standards, and so forth. There's no planning commission review for these, so you don't see these, but just be aware of that. The next level up, and we're taking these from least intense to most intense. The next level up, and we see quite a few of these, are site development permits. These are uses that are permitted by the development code, or the zoning code, I should say, but they require further review than just a permitted use because they have impacts that that go beyond just those basic permitted uses. Now, in the zoning code, an SDP, as we call them, can be approved by the development services director. But if she determines that the SDP has significant impacts, then she can elevate that review to the Planning Commission. I believe as a matter of practice that all SDPs are reviewed by the Planning Commission. I can't recall one that's been reviewed and approved administratively in the past few years. So you really see SDPs as a matter of practice. They require a public hearing. They aren't as intense as uses that require a CUP, conditional use permit, but they still are somewhat intense. And importantly, the last bullet point there, they are subject to findings, which we discussed last time. The same findings actually that apply to conditional use permits, and you can impose conditions on a site development permit. So all the issues that we discussed last time with findings, with conditions, and being cautious with the way that we approach that apply to SDPs. Takes us to conditional use permits, or CUPs as they're known. These are uses that are not otherwise permitted by the zoning code. They're only conditionally permitted, meaning that you can permit them subject to conditions that mitigate the potential impacts of the development that's being approved. I believe we talked last time about the Nolan-Dolan line of cases. If we didn't, what Nolan and Dolan stand for, those are two cases, Supreme Court cases, is the idea that when you impose conditions, when you impose what's known legally as an exaction upon development, you can only exact an amount that has an essential nexus or a connection to the impact that you're trying to mitigate. If you go beyond that, then it's illegal. And there has to be proportionality between the impact and what you're mitigating. Mr. Tucker mentioned the traffic signal outside of their development, right? That's an example of an impact that probably has a pretty good nexus to his development. And the reason why there's an agreement for them to provide half of the funding for that impact is because there is that connection. There is that rough proportionality. We talked also about the medians, right? And the fence that could separate their project from the sports park. Again, that's the kind of amenity or exaction that may or may not have a nexus or connection. So when you impose conditions with the CUP, you have to always have in mind, is there a connection between what I'm imposing and the impact? And if there is, am I going too far? Because if you do, they can challenge that and we can lose. I'm always on the lookout for that. If I feel like we've gone too far, you're going to hear from me. CUPs, they are permitted in the government code, but the government code does not lay out findings. Those are created locally. So the findings that we require were created by the City Council. They're in, I think, Section 9.184 of the zoning code. Those are the findings that we always go through. Hearings are required. Importantly, a CUP runs with the land. What that means is that once you approve a CUP for a given property, that CUP is there for all subsequent property owners as long as that land use remains. So if you approve a dance club, let's say, for a property on Portola, when the existing owner sells that property to a subsequent owner, and if that property remains a dance club, it can have that use in perpetuity. So just be aware when you're approving CUPs, this is an approval forever unless the land use changes. For all of your entitlements, and we'll get to this, for any discretionary action, CEQA has to be addressed. And the CEQA decision is always made separate from the entitlement decision, and it's made first. There's CEQA case law that requires that you first act on CEQA and then act on the entitlement. There's a reason why staff's recommended action always starts with and then goes second to the entitlement, which is why last week when I said if you just move staff's recommendation, you're complying with the law. We lay it out in a way that ensures that we're complying with the law. So just be aware of that. Variances. We actually haven't had too many variances in the past few years, which is good, because variances can be and are notoriously difficult. Variances are permitted by the government code, specifically section 65906. Unlike CUPs, the government code mandates the findings and the requirements for permitting a variance. The reason for that is that when you approve a variance, you're basically approving specialized zoning standards that apply only to that piece of property. Now, that kind of discretion, legislating zoning standards, is reserved normally to the City Council. You recommend, according to the government code, to the City Council, but they approve ordinances. With variances, you're overriding the zoning for that property. So the government code is very particular with how and when you can do that. The basic test, second bullet point, a variance is permitted if the property would suffer unique hardship because it is different from other parcels due to size, shape, location, surroundings, also topography, right? So if you have a triangle-shaped lot and the zoning standards for, say, a residential home are based on square-shaped lots, and putting any kind of home there would be impossible because of setback requirements, parking requirements. That's the classic example of when a variance would be required. Because of that triangle-shaped lot, you could never develop there absent a variance. It's a unique hardship because by giving that variance to this property, that doesn't open up the same variance to everybody else in the neighborhood, right? And so you're not forced to go and rezone everybody. The third bullet point there, no use variances. What that means is that you cannot, if a specific use is not permitted in a zone, you can't give a variance to go and allow that use. Variances are only allowed for development standards, not for actual uses. So don't even think about going there, because if you do, I'll shoot you down. Only from development standards. Findings must always be cautiously made. We addressed that last time, but with variances, for the reasons I've articulated, they really need to be cautiously made because challengers, neighbors, and courts are very skeptical of variances. And like CUPs, they run with the land. Here's just an example of the kind of lot where you could see variances being required. If this lot was subdivided, and let's just take a look at the far left corner of that lot, of the dirt area. If that far left corner was a residential lot, you can see how with the rounded area, the kind of strange shape, it would be difficult. That's a round peg for a square hole. You can even do a square peg round hole, better said, right? Development standards for residential are often based on those square lots. If you've got an oblong shaped or a strange shaped lot, it's very difficult to deal with the setback standards. Classic variance lot right there. You normally can't get variances for a small square-shaped lot. It just doesn't happen. Okay, legal non-conforming uses. Again, this is an issue that you don't often deal with. This is usually dealt with at a staff level, but it's important that you understand what these are. A legal non-conforming use is it's a use that was once lawful. It was lawful when an ordinance was adopted that changed the zoning underlying the property. So let's have an example. Let's say that there was a restaurant in existence in the corner of A and B Street. That's been there for 40 years. Okay? In the subsequent 40 years, the area redeveloped as a community, as residential. City Council and Planning Commission then go and rezone that property as residential. Okay? At that point, a restaurant, again, vertical consistency, it's not permitted, right? It's a residential area. But because the restaurant was originally permitted, and it was lawfully permitted, it's a legal non-conforming use. It can be there in perpetuity for as long as it wants to be, as long as it doesn't enlarge or increase its use. Now, the law wants to eliminate legal non-conforming uses. For that reason, there are rules with enlarging, increasing, rehabilitating legal non-conforming uses, etc. Importantly, legal non-conforming uses are not illegal uses. They have to have been established legally, and often you have property owners arguing for non-conforming status on the basis of an illegally established use. It has to be legally established. Okay, these are almost always handled at staff level. Sometimes you may get wind of it, but there's no approval process because it's just an argument that, hey, we've been approved. We are an existing legal use, so usually lawyers are involved. Finally, subdivisions. We've dealt with a lot of these, an inordinate amount. Most planning commissions in Orange County don't deal with these because Orange County is in large part built out. We've had a lot of these. This is the MAP Act, as it's known, the SMA, deals with the division of land for the purpose of sale, lease, or financing. If you're going to build on undeveloped property, you have to subdivide that property. You have to create buildable lots that are recorded. That's what the MAP Act does. Now, what you're interested in and what you do is you approve the tentative tract map. That is it's the foundation for the development. We saw kind of the rudimentary outline this evening with the Baker property of a tentative tract map, right, where each of the buildable lots are going to be situated, where the roads will be, so forth and so on. The tract map approval is a planning commission action. Now, if it's coupled with a council action, it can be elevated to the council. But typically, the planning commission approves the tentative tract map. Once that's approved, the applicant will work extensively with staff to finalize the plans associated with that approved tentative map. The final map, then, is the last step in the development process. Once that's approved, then the applicant moves on to the building permit stage and actually constructs, starts grading, constructing. The final map, unlike the tentative tract map, is approved by the city council. I mentioned city engineer there because really it's the city engineer. The city engineer finds that the final map, the final development map, is substantially in conformance with the tract map, and the city council is almost bound to approve it because the city engineer has deemed it consistent. They still have discretion, but the courts have said that it's essentially a ministerial action at that point. Okay, finally, last slide here, CEQA, because every application that we deal with has a CEQA component. The reason for that is that CEQA has to be performed for every discretionary action undertaken by the city. You do not deal with ministerial or non-discretionary actions at the Planning Commission level. As a result, you have to deal with CEQA. It's not always fun to deal with it, but we have to. It's the law. CEQA, this is really high level, and we're going to actually have, I think, Carrie at a future meeting go into a lot more detail with CEQA. Congratulations, Carrie. It's not going to be me. CEQA is concerned with whether or not a project results in significant effects on the environment. That's what you're looking at. Is there a significant impact, I should say, on the environment? There are 3 very general steps. Just so you know, the CEQA practice books are like this thick. This is what you're getting. So I'm saying there are 3 steps. There are like 3 million steps, but for the sake of tonight and 9 p.m., there are 3 steps. First, is the project exempt? You will notice that most of the projects that you see carry with them an exempt determination where staff has reviewed it and determined that it falls within one of several categories listed under state law for exempt projects, where the legislature has said, you know what, this kind of project, it's infill development, it's not really a bigger footprint than what was there, it's exempt, there's no more CEQA review required. Okay? That has to be determined by the Planning Commission, but once that determination is made, staff files a notice of exemption, and we're done. It's very, very clean. Bigger projects, like what Baker posed tonight, require far more than a notice of exemption because they're not exempt. Okay? For those kinds of projects, if it's not exempt, the first step or the second step is doing what's known as an initial study. And that initial study is dictated by state law. There's a checklist that you go through with all the environmental impacts that have to be reviewed. And you go through and you determine, is there a significant impact? Or is there no impact? Or are there impacts that can be mitigated to a level of less than significant? If you go through that entire checklist and you find that, wow, there are no significant impacts, then you do a negative declaration, which is a declaration that says there are no impacts, and that's your CEQA review. Very simple. If you go through it and you find that, wow, there are some impacts that are significant, but they can be mitigated by mitigation measures to a level that's less than significant, you can do a document known as a mitigated negative declaration, or an MND. It's a bit more intense than a neg dec, but it's not really that intense. If there are, however, impacts that are significant that cannot be mitigated to a level of insignificance or less than significant, you have to do the good old environmental impact report. Very costly, very intensive, and very extensive document. Most really big projects have an EIR associated with them. That's kind of the CEQA boogeyman that people are scared of. But the good thing with the EIRs is that when you perform one, it ensures that you know what all of the environmental impacts are. There was some talk tonight knowing what the impacts are, right? An EIR is intended to help open our eyes to understand what those impacts are according to criteria that have been laid out by the state legislature, by trained CEQA practitioners. It's what the law requires. So those are the four CEQA documents or approvals that are going to be before you. Exemptions. I don't know. Maybe an MND. I believe the Truemark and Brookfield projects were MNDs. Yes. Were Truemark and Brookfield MNDs? Yes.
Yes, we're thinking an MND on this one based on the technical studies, but the initial study isn't complete yet, so we can't make that determination.
Yeah, and it's important to note that that determination is really objective. If any box is checked, right, based on which boxes are checked, that's where you go. So there's not much subjectivity there. You can't will a project into a certain area. It either gets a neg dec, an MND, or an EIR, or an exemption, and you can't really change it. It's set by law. So you will only see those four, and more often than not, you're going to see the exemption. So if you see that, you know there's a category in state law that says this project is exempt from state, therefore no further review is required. Very, very basic. That's what you see more often than not. I didn't go over GPA's zone changes because those are rare. You're going to see potentially one here with this project. That's the last GPA and zone change that I can foresee for the coming years. We've had quite a few with the OSA. That's coming to an end. If Baker comes forward, you'll see one more. But other than that, you're going to see SDPs, CUPs, variances, and then a map for the Baker Ranch property. That is it for tonight. Any questions you have of me, of any entitlements that you see, any issues that that come before you that you have questions about.
Yeah, Mal, with regard to a legal non-conforming, a legal non-conforming structure can be undergoing routine maintenance, but if it gets left to a substantial deferred maintenance situation, it gets to a point where then it cannot be rehabilitated under its protection. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, there's a threshold in the code. I want to say it's 50%, Cheryl? Okay, the code, local law sets the threshold, and it's based on the value of the property. So if the repairs bust over that threshold, which is based on the total value of the property, then you lose legal non-conforming status. So if your restaurant, which was the example, has fallen into disrepair, and you have to improve it, and the restaurant's worth $2 million, and your repair is $1.1 million, no longer legal non-conforming. If it's 50%, I'm not sure what the standard is here.
Okay, yeah. So I mean that's just something we don't really have to worry about because it's the individual property owner's responsibility to maintain their property at a level that's sufficient, so they don't allow it to get into that situation.
Those are fights that I usually deal with. Yeah.
Okay, we'll let you fight that one out.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just clarify, our threshold here is 25%.
25%. Yeah. So state law allows a window between 25 and 75%, or 25%.
Okay. So the city has adopted the 25%, but the state law would allow it to go to 50. I had always been in my mind thinking 50. So okay.
Yeah. And that's in line with the policy that the courts have put forward, which is not anti-legal non-conforming, but they don't look kindly on legal non-conforming uses, and courts want to regulate legal non-conforming uses and ensure that all zoning is legal.
I had a comment. Two things that I think come up over the years that the Commission, you may have questions about this. One regarding the environmental documents, the mitigated negative deck and the EIR, and everyone understands, the EIR, that's the biggest document. But the two are actually very, very similar, and they both have extensive lists of mitigation measures. And so sometimes you get that comment, well, why didn't you do an EIR? The difference between those two documents, they both have all kinds of conditions that have to be complied with, all kinds of technical studies. But when it comes down to it, the EIR, you found something that you had to do a statement of overriding considerations. You actually identified an impact that could not be mitigated. That makes it an EIR. So a mitigated negative deck is extensive. It requires a lot of documentation. It's very exhaustive. It could be focused on certain steps, but it's very close to being an EIR. So you might get that as a comment, well, they didn't do an EIR. But we could certainly have completely adequate, as long as we mitigated all of the environmental effects. I think Mal was correct in talking about the variances. They're so rare. I think if we go into our records, I'm going to say we had maybe 2 or 3 in the last 20 years. I am not sure if either of them was approved. But one thing that's a little bit unique in this area of the county, because we have these planned communities, there was something that the county has in a lot of the documents that's called an alternative development standard. And it allows for something to deviate from a standard if it can be shown that the alternative development standard that they're going to use or propose is equal to or better in terms of the design and what it gives. So a good example of that, the tandem parking was an alternative development standard. Is that right? For that. So just because it's different from what's there, it may not be technically a variance because the county there are some little nuances inserted. And I think we saw the alternative development standard in Shea Baker, the air conditioning units that, well, instead of 4 feet, could it be 3 feet? And because we have unique lot sizes. So I think at a point in time in the county, probably the mid-'80s, that they decided that we're starting to see things that aren't always just single-family lots that are perfectly rectangular. And we started to see at that point in time 0 lot line and 6-packs and 4-packs and different things. And so that's in there. We have this ability to look at alternative development standards that meet the spirit and intent and protect the residents and do all those things we wanted. It's just a better design solution with a little bit of innovation to it. So that was my 2 comments on it.
Great comments. One final note, and then I'll be done and I can sit down. But Gail jogged my memory. In Lake Forest, let's go back to the second slide. So we started with general plan, went to zoning. Zoning is, it's a waste of time. Zoning. You recall that slide. It said zoning, okay? That contains the specific, with a Z, yes, exactly. That contains the specific uses that are permitted and development standards, okay? We have two tools here in Lake Forest that can be used to override, or better said, take the place of zoning, and that's the planned community. Or planned community, we have, I don't know, 8 planned communities maybe in the city, 10 planned communities in the city. For those areas, the planned community text can override the zoning, becomes the zoning ordinance for that area. And so a developer is going to look not just at the zoning code, but also the planned community text to see what specific uses and standards have been approved for that area. There's also the specific plan, which can be approved for a specific area, and that acts as kind of a larger alternative development standard for an entire area. It can override the zoning, the planned community text, and creates zoning for a larger area. Have we approved any of those with the OSA development specific plans? We haven't. Okay.
Not a specific plan, but we did area plans and planned community text for Baker Ranch, Portola, IRWD.
And those tools are in place to allow the Planning Commission and the City Council to take a larger development, a master plan community, and say, you know what, the zoning in the zoning code might not fit this exactly like we want, and we don't want to grant 1,000 variances for all the units, so instead we will approve plan community text and area plan with specialized zoning, if you will, for this entire area. So it's one more tool in the Planning Commission toolbox. Again, I don't think that we're going to see any more of those for approval, but you will see projects that come before you where the zoning is taken from the planned community as opposed to the zoning codes. Just be aware of that when they come before you. Any further questions from staff or from commission?
Just 2 quick observations on that point specifically. The specific zoning zones, it's a dangerous way to go. It's the more you use it, the more likely it is that you're going to blow yourself out of the water if somebody wants to fight it, because it starts looking like you're making an exemption here and an exemption there, and all of a sudden your grand scheme no longer looks like a grand scheme. So that's what in LA with the billboard blight. The billboard companies were very good at saying, hey, you made an exemption in this neighborhood, but not this one, and this one, but not this one. So really you don't have a code at all. And the court said, you're right. And all of a sudden they didn't have a sign ordinance because the court struck it down. And they went out and they built signs like crazy all in one weekend before the city could even get a new one on the books. And then they said, oh, it's legal nonconforming. We had it up when there was no code. And so it's just a dangerous. If we can avoid it, we should.
Well, and that's a good point. So what CJ raises is this idea of spot zoning, right? You can't take one parcel or 2 parcels and change the zoning for those, make it different from everybody else. That is objectively illegal. What we've done in Lake Forest is you have larger communities, larger areas. The Baker Ranch Plan Community, right? The AJ West Plan Community. These are large swaths of Lake Forest, and in that instance, you're completely safe. We're not applying or approving anytime soon any more planned communities in this city. Those have been approved, but it's a really good point. If you ever feel like there's spot zoning that's brought before you, let us know, because that is illegal, and we will lose the challenge. Exactly as CJ says, it's illegal, you can't do it. That's kind of planning 101, so thank you for the comment.
The other observation was just on CEQA, and you were talking about the size of the books. The type of land use I was doing rarely was CEQA involved, thankfully, so I probably know very little more than anybody else up here on the subject, but I used to have, it was a reference book that was designed only to tell you where to look if you needed something. Didn't give you any actual information, and it was this thick. Yeah. So
CEQA has made many attorneys lots of money, so it's very Byzantine. Any further questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks again. That was a great presentation. So we're on to director's comments.
I just have one quick comment, kind of from Mal's presentation. Thank you, Mal. As you recall, the League of California Cities puts on a presentation much like this, a little 3-day seminar for Planning Commission members, and due to its location and the date, actually it's going on right now, the commissioners weren't able to attend, so we're trying to just give you, take a little bit of time out of our meetings and make up for what the League of California Cities is doing.
And we're on to the city attorney's comments.
Nothing further tonight, Mr. Chairman.
And last but not least, before the adjournment, our planning commission comments. You want to start? If there's any to the right of me, I guess you can start first.
Hard to be to the right of you.
I don't want to go there. I think this is a very interesting evening. I think there was a lot of interesting comments that came back. I think that certainly the Baker family's done a lot for the city of Lake Forest, and I think that was something I certainly had not realized to the extent to which they had donated and contributed to the city. I mean, that was quite remarkable. And on the other hand, some of the other commissioners, that doesn't entitle them to automatic approval either. But I do think it was interesting to hear the residents' comments. I think you sense a certain amount of fear in their comments that we're just going to, run rush out over. That's certainly not my intent. And but I think it will be interesting to see where this project goes. I mean, there's still so much unknown about it that it's hard to tell really what it's ultimately going to look like. They don't really have a builder. They don't really know what it's going to look like. They don't know what the character of the architecture is going to be, and that kind of, to me, that's a giant open-ended question, which would lead me not to make any decision at all at this point in time. But also, I appreciate the fact that so many people came. I thought that was very good. And I thought Mal's presentation was really good. I learned a lot from it. Appreciate the time. You condense it, you get right to the point. And I like to get it this way in smaller pieces rather than a 3-day seminar, because after the first 4 hours, I'm done. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate staff putting that together for us, and staff's effort in this whole process. I've really come to appreciate what the staff does here in the city, and I appreciate all your efforts. So thank you very much. I appreciate all my fellow commissioners too. I think this is a really good group, and I've learned a lot from each one of you, and hope we can continue working together for a long time.
Hear, hear. Any other comments?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I just appreciate how appreciative Tom is. I mean, I've known Tom a while, and we appreciate each other. And in that, I appreciate Carrie. Thank you tonight, and Mal, and of course all of you. Thank you. I went to the Costa Mesa Planning Commission meeting, and if you want an exercise in how to appreciate the Lake Forest Planning Commission, go to Costa Mesa. Nothing more said. And then we also enjoyed the mayor's evening last night. That was a great thing. And I bought 20 tickets, and I forgot to put them in the bag, so I didn't win anything. Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much, Chairman.
Anyone to the left?
Again, staff did a great job. I echo Tom's comments about the public. Mal, thank you for your presentation here tonight. I'm like Commissioner Ludden. Anything over about 30 minutes, and I'm done. And somebody please remind me to bring a fire extinguisher so I can put Chairman Hamilton's flames out.
All right. I'd like to thank Mal and Director Ackerman for a wonderful lunch meeting today. It was very informative and also it's rather enjoyable. Kudos to Gail on the choice of locale. I did enjoy it. She was right. She's been telling me for a while that I should get over there, and she finally took it in her own hands to get me to the Urban Grill instead of telling me to go. So I really enjoyed it. But tonight I feel blessed to be part of this body. The camaraderie, the fact that we can zing and joke and still get things done, and we don't have to always agree in order to get to that point is a very good thing. So, and kind of along the lines of Commissioner Fuentes' comment about Costa Mesa's Planning Commission, I would say for anybody who complains about our traffic, they should make my commute to Huntington Beach just once before they are allowed to complain again. Because 4 miles down Warner from the freeway to my store takes 20 minutes most mornings, and it's 4 miles straight shot. So, and that's just the off-freeway portion. So it's not that we're ideal, but we're a whole lot better than we could be.
I guess I'm in the middle. I think last night event, State of the City. It's good to see a lot of people here attend. I really appreciate all the commissioners. I think you all contributed tonight very well. I think we all is a very good body. Staff, thanks you. I want to thank staff for the agenda items tonight that you've worked on, your diligent work. Appreciate your efforts a lot. City attorney, no, I think you did a great job too. So thank everybody. I also want to thank staff for their outreach to the commission, and I think that we've all probably had good time to exchange ideas, to learn more, to get on similar pages, the same page. So I think with that, we're adjourned.